Welcome back to North Texas in Focus. My guest on the program today is Ayden Runnels. Ayden is the new editor-in-chief of the North Texas Daily. Ayden, thank you so much for joining the program.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, let's start with this. Just tell us a little more about the NT Daily and what it means on campus and what it means for the journalism school at UNT.
Yeah, so the North Texas Daily is sort of a newspaper of record for the university. We're editorially independent from the university, so what that means is there are no faculty or staff on from UNT that direct or tell us what we publish. So everything that we do is 100% student led, and so we kind of have I like to say sort of two major purposes. One is, serving the UNT and the Denton community, getting out the news that people care about, that represents them. And then the other part is, being part of the UNT community and giving specifically journalism students the opportunity to hone their skills and sort of get involved with student journalism with the hopes that they'll find the skills and hone the skills they need to be real journalists once they graduate.
And tell us a little bit about your journey towards becoming editor-in-chief.
Yeah, I'd love to. So I started actually in January of 2022. Most of our positions at the Daily are volunteer positions. So I started as a volunteer news and opinion writer. So I would, write. I was pretty voracious. I wanted to write as much as possible. Writing is one of my favorite things to do. So I would write one or two stories a week. Did a lot of different coverage ranging from, I had the wonderful opportunity to cover this group of Ukrainian immigrants who lived in the DFW area who went out to protest during one of President Biden's speech to kind of get his attention when the Ukraine war first started. That was a really great story that I had a lot of fun with. Wrote a lot of opinion pieces from, album reviews to talking about, the paychecks of TV broadcast journalists and things like that. And then that summer, after I'd done a lot of work, I was given the opportunity to be the opinion editor. So I went from writer to editor and sort of did that up until December of 2022. And then moving into the new year, up until this month, I was the news editor of the paper, which was so much fun because I love opinion and working as opinion editor was great. But being able to, really dig into our news coverage and have a front seat in what we choose to cover and being able to cover that was really, really special. We worked on a lot of things I'm really proud of. And now I'm here as the editor-in-chief.
And as the editor-in-chief, just tell us a little bit about what the North Texas Daily offers to students in the journalism program. Why should a student that's a journalism major sign up to volunteer for the North Texas Daily?
Yeah, absolutely. So what makes the Daily so great is that it takes all of sort of the hypothetical skills that you learn in your classes and really lets rubber hit the road and lets you do it in a very, very real sense. We don't really, we don't handhold. We like to let people's skills speak for themselves and gives them the opportunity to really engage with the news. So if you're somebody who never has had a piece of work published publicly, the Daily, if you put in the time, the effort, do the reporting, write the story, we'll publish it. So it really allows people to either have their first byline ever and sort of grow their skills. I mean, that's in my case, like I just told you, I started as a volunteer. I had no public writing experience. I'd never been published in anything. And by the end of my first semester as a volunteer, I had 17 articles published that I could put in my resume, in my portfolio. And the skills I learned in that time were so beneficial to everything else I've done in class and out. So it offers volunteers that, and not just for writers as well, photographers. We do photo pages so often, and it's lovely to see your photos go online and see people engage with them. And then we also have a wonderful illustrations department. So people, even from the graphic design program that we have at UNT, or people who are just interested in doing art, get the opportunity to sort of work on editorial cartoons and compositions and attach a real meaning to their work. So there's a lot of opportunities for everybody, both in and outside the journalism department. And I love talking about it, like I said earlier, and it's just a wonderful opportunity. It's been a great opportunity for me, and one of the best parts about every position I've had here is seeing what it's done for other people.
And one thing I'd follow up on that with maybe a more existential question. A couple weeks ago on the show, I had Tim Cato, who writes about the Mavericks for The Athletic, but he was once a North Texas Daily writer himself. And one thing he mentioned is that with journalism jobs, the demand is always going to outweigh the supply. So there's always going to be there's always going to be more people seeking journalism jobs than there are journalism jobs. So I wonder, if this is in your purview, why, if a student is considering journalism, why should they choose that major over maybe a more practical major where it might be easier to find a job when they get out of college?
Yeah, I that's a really good question. It's something actually I was discussing in the newsroom with one of our editors earlier. Is I had read somewhere that people were suggesting if somebody wanted to be a journalist, that they go out and get a degree sort of in the field that they would want to cover as a journalist. So if you want to cover business, get a business degree. If you want to cover education, get an education degree, and then become a journalist. And that's certainly valid. And there's a lot of successful journalists who haven't gotten journalism degrees. What I think makes getting a journalism degree so special and unique, and why I would recommend it to anybody who wants to be a journalist, is what you'll learn that you won't learn with other degree plans or in other forms of education is the values and the ethics, and as well sort of the structure of what journalism is. Journalistic ethics is something I, think is it's the most important part of being a journalist. I'm also the Society of Professional Journalists president at UNT. It's a national organization, but UNT has a chapter. And in every class, constantly we are honing, how we can make sure that our reporting is ethical. Because you hear it now more than ever about how, there's fake news, there's news that's reported unfairly, inequitably, and while it seems easy, it sounds very easy to, people say, just report the facts, just do this, just do that. There's really a lot of gritty minutia that comes in, how to report that, things that most people, when they're writing, don't even think of. You have to be very self-questioning as a journalist. If you go out and you're looking for a source on, biofuels for environmental story, well, who are you going to look for? Why are you looking? Where are you searching? Things like that. Who you're reporting for, the types of sources you use, the language, every word that you use in a story, you have to be meticulous and very, very, what's the word? Very confident in the words that you use. And those skills, the confidence and the knowledge in what type of language to use, comes from journalism schooling that I really don't think you get anywhere else. I know that's sort of a long-winded response, but
No, it's a good one. Journalists always apologize for long-winded responses, but they're always good answers. Let me ask this, because when I was an undergraduate at UNT, worked at the Daily summer 2016.
Mhm.
And one thing that, at least in my mind, I felt was that every time I had a good story or something I thought was a good story, it wasn't getting a lot of traction, especially if it was non-controversial. Maybe it felt like, oh, it got a like or two on the Facebook page,
Mhm.
whatever. But, God forbid, like I misstated someone's title or did something like that. And then, the comment section is just piling up when you do something wrong. So I wonder, being the editor-in-chief of a college newspaper, I wonder if you've thought about how you might navigate like some of the landmines, like some of the controversies that come with being the editor-in-chief.
Yeah. And, I will say, especially my time as news editor and just writing in general has already sort of hardened me to a lot of the, I guess, we'll say backlash sometimes that you get on a story. You know, you can have a story that you feel is great, airtight, is great for the public to know, and that all can be true, but that's not going to stop people who don't like the story or don't want the story to be told to tell you that, and they will let you know. You know, in my time, I've written, you know, almost, I want to say almost or over 50 articles over the course of a year, and I've gotten tons of uh, DMs on Twitter, emails, things of people, you know, saying, "Oh, you're biased, you're unfair," things like that. But I think what we don't talk about is there are a lot of really good moments in there, and they may not be as frequent as, you know, the haters will say, as the people who are sort of judging your work, but they are much more profound. One instance, for example, we ran a story. We did a whole bunch little package deal about Thin Line Festival, and we did a story about a photographer who had sort of like a photo book, and they posted, you know, the daily's print edition of the story about them on their Instagram, and this nice little message about you know, us and what we did, and that was really heartwarming to see. And I've gotten tons of personal messages from people just saying thank you if it's a story that they didn't think was going to get covered, and we ended up doing something, or we put a spotlight on something that a lot of people don't talk about. Hearing people feel good and feel seen, that's what journalism about, is giving voice to the voiceless and putting a spotlight on people who otherwise don't have that. In terms of how that reflects on my job as editor-in-chief, you know, I want to make sure that, like I said, that the daily is sort of a positive environment for people to learn how to do journalism. And you know, sometimes we trip and we fall and we get back up. But my goal as sort of the, you know, the top of the daily is to make sure that any negativity that's coming, you know, if there's critique, it's always the journalist's prerogative, and to make sure that we are correcting mistakes, getting out that most accurate information as possible, things like that. But when it comes to just sort of negativity and bad vibes, for lack of a better term, I'm hoping that, you know, I can sort of be the middle person, and help cultivate a positive learning experience while keeping out sort of the bad vibes, if you
Mhm.
will.
Yeah. And as we start to wrap this up, I would think in my mind, one of the most important things of being the editor in chief of a student newspaper is making sure that that newspaper is relevant, both on campus and hopefully reverberating outside of campus. So how do you make that happen? How do you make sure your product is relevant?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, we always hope that our news coverage is important, right? Because news is always going to be important. And I think, especially in the past 5 or 6 months, we've done an excellent job of, you know, being relevant on campus. You know, there's a lot of things happening across the country, across Texas, and right here in Denton. Hot button issues like Proposition B, UNT, you know, is sort of lumped in with the other universities on what diversity, equity, inclusion bills are going to look like. There's an anti-tenure bill in the legislature as well that could affect us, and we're going to report on all those things as they happen. But I think, in terms of relevancy, if you look at our numbers, you know, we're actually in the process of getting a new website, and with that, we've sort of updated our social media coverage, and we have a lot more interaction, more than we have in my time being here, so about a year and a half. And so I think that speaks volumes to how important we are to people. And you know, the daily's email is constantly filled with messages from people. That's one of the most surprising things when I took, you know, the role of editor in chief, is going through the editor in chief sort of messaging systems and seeing just how often people interact and tell us, you know, you need to be covering this, but also thank you for covering this. And any feedback is good feedback, whether they, you know, are giving us critique, or having that positive feedback. And you know, the Denver Record Chronicle just got absorbed by KERA, so the Daily may very well be the only print newspaper, you know, in the North Texas area in Denton. And so with that, I think we have a new responsibility to give to our readers everything that we can, And so I think in terms of relevancy, I think we're actually becoming more relevant than we have in several years. And I'm excited to see what those new responsibilities allow us to do, because it's a responsibility and it's a privilege.
And as a final question, you'll be the editor in chief through the end of the year, I believe.
Yes, yeah, all the way until December.
Okay, so what does an ideal year look like for you?
Ooh, that's a good question. An ideal year. It's
For the
sort of,
paper.
yeah, for the paper. I would say um basically just living up to those two values that I mentioned at the very beginning. If at the end of the year we have more people involved at the daily and they feel like it's a positive space, and we've done great news coverage, great arts and life coverage, sports coverage, opinion pieces, all of it that really represents who the UNT student body is, who the Denton, the people of Denton are, then that's an ideal year. That's a great year for us. We can talk specific projects, ideas, plans, and things, but really at the end of the day, I'll be happy if we are serving our readers. And yeah, that's about all I can say.
And with that, Ayden Runnels is the new editor in chief of the North Texas Daily. Ayden, thank you so much for joining the program.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.